If you've ever wanted to see a fight in the Rwby series that would be as close as we could get to an unstoppable force versus an immovable object, well, I think Yatsuhashi Daichi versus Hazel Reinart would be as close as we could get. You know, outside of magic, maidens, and gods, etc. So this is what we're going to do today. We are going to pit these two titans against one another, 1v1 in the next exhibition match of the Phoenix Festival Tournament. They'll be using Amity Coliseum as the stage, fighting to a full aura break with no ring outs. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight goes, and honestly, I think it's going to be pretty subjective depending on how each person evaluates Hazel's defenses and Yatsuhashi's offenses, as well as the other factors that play into both of their abilities. I'll do my best to analyze their weapons, semblances, fighting styles, and offer up my opinions on who I think would be more likely to win, but ultimately it will be decided by all of you in the comments below by majority who would end up winning this fight. I honestly expect to see this fight in the Phoenix Festival Tournament when it actually takes place coming this August, so this will be a good precursor as an exhibition match to see or determine how it would play out in the Phoenix Festival Tournament. And if it ends up different, or if it is close to 50-50 here, I'm curious to see how it will eventually turn out. But first, let's go over last week's match between Nora Valkyrie and Lai Ren. A lot of people were in agreement that the power does indeed beat the flower in this case, that Nora would beat Ren if they were to fight one-on-one, no holds bar. Ren has a lot of agility, but with no biomes in play, he wouldn't be able to take full advantage of that, and Nora landing one or two good hits would just make Ren go down. He does have a lower durability than many other characters in the Rwby series, and that is a major disadvantage. With biomes in play, though, he would have a lot more mobility and would have a better chance, but it seems a lot of people think that Nora would still overpower him in that case. So ultimately, Nora would beat Ren. But going into today's match, these two titans are going to be interesting to evaluate, as we haven't really seen them that much in the Rwby series. Yatsuhashi we've seen fight a couple times in Volume 2, Volume 3, we got an expansion on his abilities in After the Fall, but Hazel has only fought once in the Rwby series. Granted, over the course of a couple episodes at the end of Volume 5 in the overarching Battle of Haven Academy, but still. So this will be interesting to see how each of you evaluate their abilities in the comments below. Let's start off with Hazel Reinart, though, the immovable object, because this man is a tank in and of himself. Go back and watch the fight of Haven Academy and count the number of times Hazel fought different opponents. He fought against Ren and Nora, then against Crow and Oscar and Ozpin, and then again against Nora, who knocked him flying through the wall and in theory did break his aura because he was then speared by Weiss and then ended up fighting Weiss, Blake, and Rwby alongside Emerald and Mercury. So he fought against a lot of people and was still running by the end of it, still going on his adrenaline, though once the fight was over, adrenaline had worn off, and for some reason, he still wasn't bleeding out from the hole in his gut. So this man inherently has a massive amount of strength, massive amount of stamina, a huge amount of defense, because he fights barehanded and blocks weapons just with his arms and his aura, and the massive amount of defensive power that he has, plus he has an incredible healing factor, for the fact that he was gored and was still standing, fighting, and was able to run away carrying another person after that. Not to mention, he's also the largest person we have seen in the Rwby series, standing 8 feet tall, so there's also that he is even towering over Yatsuhashi. Well, not towering, but still larger than Yatsuhashi, so yeah. When it comes to Hazel's fights, I think we're going to have to add in a little bit of an addendum that if his aura is broken and he's injured, I think that's okay, because you'd need a strong enough hit to be able to blast through that. And honestly, knowing Hazel, he'd probably be okay with that because he wouldn't think that he would lose. Now, Hazel's semblance is numbing agent. He can numb any pain that he feels so that he gives himself the ability to inject dust directly into his body, causing constant damage to his body, hence why his healing factor is so insane, because his body's constantly having to keep up with the damage he's causing. Probably also plays into his defense, everything like that. But because of that, his punches now have an elemental aspect to it. He could grab someone and electrocute them or burn them with fire dust. I would imagine he has other dust that he could use as well. Hopefully we'll see later in the series, but for right now he's only used electricity and fire dust. Kind of works very well if your opponent has a metal weapon, if you can just grab their weapon, block it with your arm, and then electrocute them through it, so that's going to be something Hazel can take to his advantage. Plus, he can also use ranged attacks by also not only shooting out lightning or fire, but combining the two, as that's what he used to take out Weiss's Queen Lancer summon. So, even though Hazel goes into battle bare-fisted, he has elemental dust damage as well as ranged damage along with it. This man is a walking fortress that has incredible defense and healing factor, but not slacking in the areas of offense and ranged attacks either. Then we get to Yatsuhashi Daichi, probably the strongest character physically that we have seen in the entire Rwby series so far. Not taking into account, of course, Adam's semblance, because we don't know the ceiling on that one, and honestly, Adam, if he stored up enough power, could probably take out anyone, including breaking through Hazel's defense. But beside that point, Yatsuhashi, we have seen what his strength is capable of. At the end of Volume 2, when we first saw him fight, he took a simple one-handed swing and shattered the ground around him, sending Grim, twice as large as himself, flying backwards with the shockwave. And then we saw what a full force jumped swing and ground pound would do from Yatsuhashi's attack in the fight that he had against Emerald and Mercury in the Vital Festival tournament. Now, Mercury was able to tank this hit from Yatsuhashi, but we saw the damage that Yatsuhashi caused. He destroyed an entire geyser biome by putting this much force into his attack. So likely, not only is he incredibly strong physically, he's been aware of this his entire life and been trying to control it, but he's also probably enhancing his weapon to a high degree, using it as a conduit for aura. Now, the only reason Mercury was able to tank this attack was because of his metal legs. I would argue that anyone else who tried to do that, even with metal soles of his boots, would probably end up with both of his legs broken. I would think, but, you know, correct me if you have other opinions down in the comments below. Yatsuhashi has incredible power, and he's no slouch when it comes to speed either. He definitely outspeeds Hazel, but the reason Mercury was eventually able to defeat Yatsuhashi was because of Mercury being quite a bit faster than Yatsuhashi, not to mention, even though Yatsuhashi was a second-year student having a lot more training, I think he's also a year older than Mercury. Mercury has trained his entire life to be an assassin, to take out people who use semblances while not having a semblance of his own. You know, thanks to his father for taking his, but still, we'll get into that at another point. Yatsuhashi also has a very terrifying semblance. He can erase people's memories, and the memories of his own choosing, which can be a very dangerous semblance if used improperly. Case in point, he erased his mother's memory of his newborn sister, you know, a couple months after his sister was born, and he was 8 years old, not really getting enough attention from his parents, etc., but he had a semblance that his parents didn't know about at the time, and was able to wipe an entire person's existence from his mother's memory. Granted, only knew about his sister, Hiyoko, for a couple months, but still very terrifying. And Yatsuhashi realized this and was scared of his own power, took care of his sister, was able to, you know, right that situation, but terrified his entire family when they finally found out and listened to what his semblance could do. Now, he doesn't like applying this to battle, but we found out after the fall that he will if it's necessary. And we also know that in the Vital Festival tournament, he told Emerald, I can't promise you won't leave without a scratch, so we know he's okay with fighting his hardest against opponents. So for the sake of this tournament, we will say that he will use his semblance, and the way it overall works is if it's a fleeting memory, if it's something not really important to a person, Yatsuhashi can actually pretty much erase that permanently. But if it's a bit more ingrained in a person's memory, it will return eventually, depending on how ingrained that is, whether it will return in a couple minutes, whether it will return in a day or so, depending. So for the sake of this tournament, we're going to say that this tournament that Hazel is fighting in, it's not a fleeting memory, but it's not, you know, ingrained in his long-term memory. Certainly not as important as, you know, the memory of what he believes Ozpin killing his sister. So putting it on a scale to there, it lands somewhere in the middle. So Yatsuhashi could make him forget where he is and what he's doing to land a couple hits, but Overall, I think that might snap the memories back that Yatsuhashi is an enemy, but overall, these are the strengths that each of these characters have. Now, one thing I do want to say about Yatsuhashi, he has no ranged attacks thus far. I made a video yesterday discussing the abilities of Aura, including projecting it outwards, the ultimate Aura offensive technique, in my opinion, at least when it comes to range, using an Aura arc. Now, Yatsuhashi likely uses his weapon as a conduit for his Aura, as I already stated. So if he can focus that using the strength that he has and the speed that he can swing this giant sword, he could probably match what I think Jean is capable of with an Aura arc. So yeah, I look forward to seeing if he can do this, possibly in Before the Dawn, when we get that book later this July. But let's get into how I think this match would actually go. Starting off in the tournament, Hazel would not have the anger that he had at Haven Academy, so he may not take this fight as seriously at the beginning, but of course he still intends to win because this is the entire scenario that we're setting up. So both of these characters, Yatsuhashi would have to go in close range to attack Hazel. Now Hazel, being a bit more cautious, maybe not wanting to damage his body as much, because even at Haven Academy, fighting for the relic, fighting for Salem, he didn't inject dust into his body until he saw Ozpin. He thought he would be able to take it on his own before that. Neither of these characters know each other's abilities, so they might be a bit more cautious, though Yatsuhashi, confident in his own strength, would probably run in and try to attack Hazel right close range. Now, Hazel's used to blocking with just his arms. He did that against Ren in the fight at Haven Academy. I don't know if he would think that he could actually tank Yatsuhashi's blow, because Yatsuhashi is way stronger than Ren. So I think in this case, Hazel might try to dodge, or realizing that Yatsuhashi is a pretty toned guy who I think stands 7'6", 7'8", so almost as big as Hazel himself, I think he might inject the dust right away and, try to get a hold on things so that maybe with the dust infusion, his muscles do kind of expand a little bit. He does become stronger. His defensive capabilities, I think, would increase proportionally, maybe. So he might be able to block some of Yatsuhashi's blows at this point, but his aura would be depleting. We know Hazel has a massive amount of aura, but Yatsuhashi, his strikes are strong enough to chip away at that in pretty major chunks. Now, Yatsuhashi would continue to strike, try to block Hazel's attacks, because I would argue Yatsuhashi is definitely faster than Hazel. So Hazel would try to knock Yatsuhashi back. Yatsuhashi would definitely be more cautious of Hazel's attacks. You know, a guy injecting dust into his body, probably something you don't see every day. And this would give Hazel the opportunity to do some range strikes against Yatsuhashi. Yatsuhashi wouldn't be expecting this, probably be taking some hits and damage at this point, and he would decide to use his semblance of memory wiping to wipe Hazel's memory of like the last 24 hours or something, make him very confused as to where he is, what he's doing, and this would give Yatsuhashi the opportunity to land at least one heavy blow against Hazel that he probably wouldn't block. Now, at this point, this might make it so Hazel's just immediately knocked out, but he is a pretty hefty tank, so he could survive, or well, he would survive. Yatsuhashi wouldn't be going for the kill, but his aura might not break at this point. We do know that throughout the battle at Haven Academy, when he was fighting against everyone, he was slowly taking damage, and Nora, after being electrocuted, was able to break his aura, even though we didn't see it happen. It probably should have happened. I don't see any reason why Hazel would have deactivated his aura on his own, because Weiss stabbed him through the gut. So that being the case, Nora's strength was enough to break his aura after the damage he had taken throughout the fights before. Because of that fact, I think Yatsuhashi would eventually end up beating Hazel in this fight. Whether there's biomes in play or not in this case, I don't think it would matter much, simply because of the attack that Yatsuhashi did in the Final Festival tournament before. He destroyed the entire geyser biome with his one attack. I think that would be the case in any biome, and Hazel would just not really care. He's not much for dodging. He's not the fastest opponent. He just tanks the hits. So Yatsuhashi would have the advantage due to his power being stronger than Hazel's and being fast enough to dodge fair amount of Hazel's blows. Not to mention also blocking with his sword is a pretty good defense for Yatsuhashi to have. He was able to tank a hit from an Elysian Paladin, or at least block it for a few seconds before the Paladin overpowered him at the Fall of Beacon Academy, so I do think Yatsuhashi would come out on top, and Yatsuhashi would be an extremely difficult opponent to beat if he's using his semblance. Now, even if Yatsuhashi used his semblance and made Hazel forget where he was, what he was doing, etc., Hazel is experienced enough in combat that he might be aware of, some person charging him with a sword. He wouldn't lose all that combat experience and would probably be aware enough to possibly block Yatsuhashi's blow at that point. So it could be possible that that game-ending blow that Yatsuhashi would be able to strike because of his semblance might not be able to connect, and Hazel, if he could get a hold of Yatsuhashi's weapon and just block it with his hand, again, I don't know if Hazel would be able to do that with Yatsuhashi's full force strike, and then just activate the lightning dust, Yatsuhashi would be electrocuted and would probably end up dropping his weapon at that point. Become a fisticuffs battle, and still I think Yatsuhashi would have the advantage, because I do think Yatsuhashi, even just being a student, Hazel being like 40 something, I think, Yatsuhashi I still think is just a bit stronger with just, bare fists than Hazel is. Even Dust Enhanced, that gives them the elemental aspect, but I don't know. This fight could be kind of a toss-up depending on how it goes, so for me this is the most 50-50 so far, though I would give the edge to Yatsuhashi simply because he is stronger, and using Fulcrum, just by the name, he can get the momentum going, get that amount of force, and would eventually be able to overpower Hazel. I think Yatsuhashi would have the edge like 11 times out of 20. It's gonna be close, but I think Yatsuhashi would win. Anyways, this is my thoughts on the battle, who I think would overall have the advantage, even as slight as it may be, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I look forward to hearing with them and discussing with you. As well, make sure that you go and vote in the best weapons poll that is currently going on. Use the link in the description below and vote for your top 3 weapons in the Rwby series. Poll will be live till April 24th at midnight Eastern Standard Time, and then over the following weekend we'll see what weapons reign supreme in the Rwby series. Now for the next exhibition match of the Phoenix Festival Tournament, we are going to have Fox Alistair versus Emerald Sustrai. Another interesting matchup where both of these characters' semblances won't be that effective on their opponent. Fox's semblance inherently just isn't a combative type, and Emerald's, well, how effective is her semblance going to be on someone who cannot see? Though I would argue it's not going to be completely ineffective either. I'm looking forward to this match. How about all of you? But with all that being said, make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see some more Rwby content. There's plenty more theories and match videos and other Rwby content on the way, so look forward to that. Join the Guild of the Eternal Flame, tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, and I'll see you guys in the next video.